This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
There's a lot going on right now. You know that, as if I need to tell you. Some of you are going to be getting around to this podcast days or weeks after we release it because you're so darn busy. But you know that there have been elections in a while ago now. New Brunswick, recently BC, more recently Saskatchewan, and of course a big AGM, the United Conservative Party's coming up, pretty much right as soon as we release this podcast. I know a bunch of you that are going to be traveling the QE2 and other Alberta highways on your way to Red Deer are going to be listening to Real Talk on your way there, and we're going to be making it worth your while as the co-hosts of The Discourse, Erika Barootes and Cheryl Oates, join us on this edition of the Real Talk Roundtable. This episode is made possible with the support of Alberta's top online real estate school. That's Relo, RELO.ca is where you can find them. If you're thinking of starting a career in real estate, you're looking at all these other folks that are doing exactly that. They've been working in real estate for a while now and making a great living, choosing their own hours, unlimited earning potential, and of course helping folks along the way. You know you'd be a perfect fit, but you want to start it in the right direction. Relo has the structure and the instructors to make sure that your career starts off on the right foot. They've got all kinds of tutorials, and they don't walk away once you graduate with your license ready to go. That's when the relationship is just getting started. You can learn more about the Relo Advantage on their website. Make sure you use the promo code Ryan100, all one word, when you get started on those Alberta commercial and residential real estate bundles to save yourself a couple of $100. That's Ryan100 at Relo.ca. As we welcome back to the show, the founding president of the United Conservative Party, Erika Barootes, joining us live in studio, and your colleague, your co-host on The Discourse, one of Canada's most popular political podcasts. She is just back from Saskatchewan, where she quarterbacked the Saskatchewan NDP's campaign. It's Cheryl Oates joining us, I believe, from Calgary, correct, Cheryl?
From Calgary, yeah.
All right, and for the benefit of those that are listening in on the podcast, behind you on your wall, a map of Calgary, correct? And all the
That's
orange
right.
colored in is the NDP ridings from the most recent municipal election. Did you sit down with a glass of wine after that most recent municipal election and an orange pencil crayon and just get to work with a big smile on your face?
It was so cathartic, Ryan.
Yeah, I bet it was. Hey, let's talk. We'll talk UCP AGM. Obviously, there's a ton to get into, but congratulations. I mean, obviously, it kind of feels like congratulating Connor and Leon after, losing Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final.
Nice comparison.
Well, because they've got some stars on the team, and the team came together, and there was a lot of positive momentum. But ultimately, you didn't hoist the cup. How are you feeling about the NDP's performance in the Saskatchewan election?
I mean, of course, I'm disappointed. I mean, the campaign was awesome. Everyone had a really good time on it. I think people watching in Saskatchewan who are paying attention really closely could see that Carla Beck was having a great time on the campaign. We had this incredible surge of momentum during the 4 weeks of the RIP period. And we had a real pathway to forming government. And so when you raise your expectations and you raise your hope for that, obviously it's disappointing to not get all the way there, but, double the seats, more than double the seats of what the NDP got in 2020. So very, very proud of the campaign and very, very proud of the result. And I know that caucus and that party are going into the next 4 years, like full of vigor and ready to hold the government to account, which I don't think the Sask party can say right now. Mm-hmm. So overall, feeling quite proud.
What do you think?
Ryan looks at me. I'm like, I do not speak for the Sask party.
No, you
I'm
don't.
Just kidding.
And you didn't work on the campaign.
No, I didn't. And I said I was going to go out there, and then we had a family trip that I forgot about. So didn't make it home to my province of Saskatchewan to go head-to-head with Cheryl. But I do want to say, it's really weird when you're friends with someone that you want them to lose, but you're also proud of what they did. So I think Cheryl ran a great campaign. I thought it was smooth sailing. They were both pretty boring campaigns, meaning there was no eruptions or a bunch of messy stuff. I thought both both Premier Moe and Carla Beck did a great job in the debate. And anyways, but for the Sask party, yeah, I think that they've kind of reverted back to like the lay of the land of how they were when the party started, right? Very rural centric. A win is a win. So like, that's awesome. And I think that I'm happy that the Sask party is continuing in government. But they have a few new guys. They lost a bunch of veterans. I mean, especially in Regina and Saskatoon, people that had cabinet positions. So they're going to have to shift that. Like, it's going to be challenging to who do you put in cabinet, because you're also all rural for the most part, with a few little sprinklings of urban. So it's it's a different challenge for Premier Moe now. But like, they should still be holding their heads high because they won.
You're not wrong. I mean, you're not wrong about a win is a win.
I'm never wrong,
right? Well, sometimes you and I might disagree. You and Cheryl do too. That's kind of part of your secret sauce on the podcast. But Cheryl, there's kind of been an interesting trend happening in Canada, albeit different outcomes. So in New Brunswick, Higgs is soundly defeated.
Yeah.
EB wins in BC, but just barely. Right, Moe wins more than barely. It's a majority, but obviously loses some ground. What are you reading into that, if anything?
Yeah, I think, like, truthfully, this was a close election. Like, the NDP fell 4 seats short of forming government, so it is a pretty tight election, especially given the last result in 2020. I mean, I think for a long time, Conservatives have campaigned on sound bites and talking points, and at a time in Canada when we're facing real problems. And in Saskatchewan, we know that healthcare is tough across the country. So it's worst place in Canada, in Saskatchewan. It's really tough. Like, people are dying on waiting lists, waiting for the care that they need without ever having the diagnostics or seeing a doctor. And when you have that kind of emotion within the electorate, when you have people that are looking for real solutions, talking points just don't offer that. And I think you saw that, the NDP was elected in every single seat in Regina and every single seat except one in Saskatoon. And that is a message to the government that people are looking for real solutions to these problems. And just saying everything is fine when the electorate knows it's not is not good enough. And I think Scott Moe did show some humility the day after the election, saying, the electorate has told us that we haven't got this right and we need to do better and we will do better. But I think he could have benefited from saying that, 6 months earlier. Instead, he just made his way through the campaign telling everyone everything's fine. We've got some tax cuts for you. We've got some tax credits. And instead, Carla Beck offered a real plan and a real way to fix it. And I think a lot of people saw hope in that.
What do you think, Erika, when it comes to the future of Scott Moe and the party, when you kind of barely win an election? I mean, yeah, you won, but do you think there's maybe rumblings in the party, like maybe it's time to switch horses?
I would think if that's the case, they would do that probably in 2 years from now. He still carried the party to a victory. It wasn't like he's now in official opposition, which I think that would more trigger a leader.
He'd be gone immediately, right?
Well, in Alberta, yeah. No, I think he might transition out. I mean, he's been in there since 2011, right? Like, he's had a long tenure. This is his second election running as premier. That's longer than a lot of leaders in Alberta's history of getting 2 terms. So who knows?
When's the last time an Alberta premier got a full 1 term? Rachel Notley, I guess.
No, I guess, right? True. Yeah, we're not even batting a full term.
Yeah.
Danielle Smith will be the next, but it goes back to Ralph Klein, right? So, I do want to jump back to something Cheryl said though, because I think she took it from she's coming out of Saskatchewan looking at it, what the Conservatives there were saying. I think if we look at all these last elections, even to Alberta's, Manitoba's, I think that the healthcare issue is really saying, and the affordability, whether we say it's the provincial or federal government's responsibility, et cetera, I think that we've seen a discontent with the governing party. You see the PCs in Manitoba getting out, you see the UCP losing seats, you see the NDP in BC losing seats and still barely holding government. All of the governing parties kind of lost a little in that election, regardless of if they held government or not. I think there's a huge will of the population that they're just not happy with how the last, say, 4 years have gone governing. So I think it's an interesting theme that we saw, that it's a lot of them, it was I don't want to use the term change, but it was a discontent with the current way that the governments were operating. And it's not even partisan. It's just I think because of things like healthcare, because of affordability, and that like those all governments need to be listening to the population now to try and fix it, regardless of how you think you should fix it.
Yeah, well said. Cheryl, do you think, I mean, I noticed a physical reaction from you when I asked Erika.
Sure, her poker face is like,
no, I love it. This is why when we have you two on, people need to watch it on YouTube, not listen to the podcast. But what do you think Scott Moe's future looks like? I mean, just your crystal ball, just your gut instinct. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know how he could stay. I mean, like no one on the Sask Party side, I think, walked away from that campaign saying we ran a great campaign. Because it wasn't. It was like a typical conservative playbook. It was a 2020 campaign dropped on top of 2024. There was no hope. There was no optimism. There was no real solutions. Like, of course, there are people who worked in that campaign that will walk away proud of the job they've done. But overall, it was not an inspiring campaign. And Scott Moe was at the helm of that. They lost a ton of seats. They lost almost everything in Regina and Saskatoon. I don't know how he could stay on as leader if they hope to run a competitive election in 2028, because they need a reset. They need something fresh if they want to be competitive. And the problem with him stepping down right away is that they've just lost most of their front bench strength with seats flipping in both Regina and Saskatoon. And so there isn't an heir apparent for Scott Moe. And so if there was someone waiting in the wings, I'd say, like, this guy's gone right away. But I think he will have to wait until there's someone ready to take his job.
I love the heir apparent conversation, because we can have it in a provincial context. A lot of people are having it in a municipal context. I'm looking at some mayoral races that people are kind of prognosticating about already, Edmonton included. What will the next mayoral race look like? And then, of course, a lot of people looking at the federal Liberals right now as well. What Trudeau says he's staying, but this list, we talked about it this week on the show. Apparently approximately 20 MPs signing this list, and then there was like the kind of sort of not asking him to resign but to pay more attention to us, but we're taking it public. But I mean, it's just like a debacle right now. It's an absolute mess. Do either of you believe, I'll come to you first, Erika, do you believe there has to be a strong alternative option or an heir apparent in place to start entertaining leadership talk? Or does a leadership race or talk around it start to attract some of the candidates that could be formidable, do you think?
Yeah, I don't think you need to. I mean, in my life, there's always been someone that's like, I mean, you look at even before Jason Kenney's review, there was Brian Jean and Danielle Smith, like chomping at the bit. So I personally have never lived a place where there hasn't been an heir apparent. So,
but I wouldn't characterize like Brian Jean or Danielle Smith as the heir apparent to
versus
Jason
the Travis
Kenney.
Taves of that election.
Let me say, like, if we were talking about Stephen Harper, 8 years ago, I'd be going John Baird, Jason Kenney, Ronna Ambrose.
Right, okay.
Like, I'd be listing off.
There
like
hasn't been
15,
someone that's like coming up as like in the pipeline. I think no, I think that like in this case, like I think if there's always going to be someone. There's always going to be someone coming out of the woodwork. Does that push them out faster and have caucus maybe have those conversations? I think that there will always be someone that wants to come in. We probably saw it with Alison Redford. Then you saw Jim Prentice kind of come out of left field after she had resigned. There was no one, I don't think, in that, maybe Doug Horner in that caucus that was like ready to go. I don't know. I would say, like, to answer the question, I don't think it's needed. I think that that's been a lot of time the case, that there's that pipeline. I mean,
there wasn't really an heir apparent in the. I mean,
Sarah Hoffman.
Well, the Alberta NDP. I mean, I would have. I went on the record and thought Raki Pancholi, but I mean,
and she
quit
early.
Well, I don't know if she quit. She's the deputy leader, and she's probably the future.
Opposition.
She's probably the future premier of Alberta. I've said that on the air several times to make sure that the audience knows. But are heirs apparent overrated, Cheryl?
I think things happen faster when there's an heir apparent. Like if someone is ready to step down as leader and there's someone that they have maybe groomed over the last few years or maybe like set up to take the job, it happens a lot smoother. Now, I'm certainly not saying no one will step up if Scott Moe wants to step aside. Like the premier's job is pretty alluring. So when you're the party in power, I'm sure people step up and come out of the woodwork. But is that person someone that can first do the job and second hold the party together? That's a different question. And when you're not someone who has come up through the party or necessarily been, in the inner circles of the party, it's hard to know if that's the case or whether it's someone who will actually divide the membership over the next, years leading up to an election.
Can it be? I'm just going to throw a hypothetical. Could you have someone that lost their seat, like a cabinet minister, come back? And like, what would that be like? I don't think I've ever seen that happen, but You
I
know,
mean, it
to
would
Sarah
be
Cheryl's point, though, how do you hold the party if you can't hold your own seat? Like, that would probably be the big,
move.
yeah.
Like, vote for this loser is basically the tagline.
He's going to go run in
So-
rural, or she or he is going to go run in rural.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a bold move. I want to ask you too as well about the BC election briefly, and then I want to spend the lion's share of our conversation talking about the UCP AGM. Obviously, the live chat is all fired up and wants to get into it. They're expecting in Red Deer, based on registration,
Like
one of the
6,000?
biggest political gatherings in Canadian history,
Yeah.
which is pretty remarkable. So we'll get into it. These two, Erika Barootes, Cheryl Oates. We got some news, I think, on the return of the Discourse as well. Before we do, it is November 1st, the day that we're recording this. And I want to, first of all, can you show me, Johnny, the one Halloween photo that I sent you? This is, did you see that one? It's okay if you don't have it. It's in Slack if you can pull it up. Listen, yeah, Johnny's going to grab it for me. This is at ryanjesperson.com. I'm going to show you a super cool Halloween costume that I really love.
Is it mine?
And yours was really good, by the way.
Thank you.
Your house was scary as hell. I
Yeah.
saw your Instagram
It's like my
story.
Christmas. Like,
Yeah.
I was having a time yesterday.
Yeah, very well done.
Thank you.
November 1st means under the events link at ryanjesperson.com, you look for pond hockey. We have officially opened registration for the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. And yeah, let's look at this photo. This is Strainer and Greer. Craig Strain is the straw that stirs the drink at our tournament. This guy, an absolute beauty. Look at him wearing the referee uni from the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic for Halloween. And I love Greer rocking the C for Team Canada. Hope you boys had a happy Halloween. And we know we'll be seeing you out at the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. It goes February 1st. That's a Saturday out in St. Albert. We've got room for 24 teams. It sells out every single year. $600 a team, maximum of 6 players, and all the proceeds to charity. This is our partnership with the Canadian Progress Club, St. Albert chapter. You know, this tournament in its history, this year, it'll put us over $1.5 million raised. Absolutely unbelievable. We still have some sponsorship opportunities. We have an announcement coming up with a really exciting partnership. And of course, we're asking you to get your team registered as soon as you can. Go to ryanjesperson.com, click on the events link. That's the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. That's coming up Friday. Oh, geez. Get it together, Jesperson.
Saturday in
It's
St.
a
Albert.
Saturday. It is February 1st, and it's in St. Albert. It's going to be a ton of fun. Friesen Brothers has a big thing going on this weekend. They've got their vegan feast happening on Saturday and Sunday, November 2nd and 3rd. You can find out more on their website. I can't believe the price on this. Johnny just wants me to get over it. He's like, Jespo, plant-based is more affordable. Like, figure it out. $22 a person for an all-you-can-eat vegan feast at Friesen Brothers in Rabbit Hill. That's South Edmonton, Glenora in West Edmonton, Stony Plain. Shout out to you in Fort Saskatchewan. More details on the website. You can just show up as well. That's 4 to 8 p.m. Saturday and Sunday. The vegan feast at Friesen Brothers. And our friends at California Closets want to remind you, as you're putting away the Halloween costumes and you're putting all of the decor back in the basement and it's all a total disaster. And the best you can do is stacking Rubbermaids and old boxes on top of one another. But gosh, wouldn't it be nice to have a custom storage solution? They do that. They can do it in your storage room, your laundry room, your boot room, your garage, whatever you need. It's custom closets and storage solutions for the entire home. You can request a free consultation today at californiaclosets.ca.
You know, vegetables grow on trees, guys. They grow on trees. They're very cheap.
They grow in the
Are there
ground?
actually any vegetables
Are
that grow
there,
on
Johnny?
trees?
Let's get technical here.
I wonder if any...
Sorry, fruits. Sorry. I do want to throw this up, Erika, because I know you don't like him, but you have to admit this was cute last night. The leader of our country with his son
Justin Trudeau
dressing
there.
up, and he actually got some good comments on this on his Instagram. But the final product here, Frankenstein and his master Victor there.
Isn't the am I wrong on this, but isn't the doctor's name Frankenstein? Isn't that the twist that nobody
That
understands?
is.
Or no?
So that's
Yeah.
what I didn't understand. Oh, and I also wanted to show you this, Ryan. Our friend Ian Hannah-Mansing was handing out candy last night, and look who stopped by, Tegan and Sarah.
How cool is that?
At his house.
Did
yeah.
you see that Ian Hannah-Mansing, obviously the lead anchor on The National, and CBC's The National, was reporting last night they had like 1,700 kids to their door.
That's why I saw you comment on his post, and then I had to go
Yeah.
in and look. And then I saw, there was Diwali fireworks going off. There was it looked like thousands of people were on the street in front of his house. It was
Absolutely
crazy, yeah.
bonkers. How many trick-or-treaters did you get in front of your house?
About 150. And that's actually
150?
high for us. Like, we're kind of off the beaten path. So we're not in the cool kid area like you are with all those sweet houses.
Yeah. How about you, Cheryl?
We got about 75.
75. That's pretty good. I wonder what the average is. I hear these people that are getting like 1,000 plus, and I just don't even know.
I was doing it was Calgary Eye Opener just before this, and they said that it's like people were writing and saying they got 2 or 800. It was like this huge like discrepancy of like people coming to doors. I need to live in these areas where I get 800. Like, it would just make me so happy.
Well, if Halloween's your Christmas,
Yeah,
100%. I usually have a rule against reading DMs and private text messages, but I do want to share this. I didn't even share this with you yet, Johnny. Received a DM from Ian Hannamansing on Monday. I don't think he'd mind me sharing. He says, he says, even before you mentioned my name, Johnny and I did a show on defunding the CBC and some of the conversation around it. And I did reference Ian in the show because I just freaking love the guy. And he said, even before you mentioned my name, he said, I was going to write and tell you how impressed I was with the discussion you had on the pod about the CBC. It was insightful and fair.
Wow.
He said, usually media conversations about the CBC can be superficial or on the extremes, love or hate, and I appreciate the real talk.
Wow.
That from the chief anchor of The National. How cool is that?
Because, Erika, we were calling Ian overpaid. No, I'm just kidding. I'm joking.
You know what I guarantee for the
He's
amount...
one of the guys who's underpaid.
He
for
probably
sure.
is. I don't know
For
what he
sure.
makes. It's none of my business. But
He's amazing.
This is going to make him uncomfortable when he hears this. But he. Oh, is that okay?
Yeah.
Hang on. You got to send that to Johnny in Slack or something like that.
Can we post it?
Cheryl's
It's so
Halloween
good.
costume.
Send it over.
We'll put it up.
Ridiculous.
We'll put it up by the end of the show.
Oh my gosh, it's so cute.
Okay. I don't think that I understand that. I don't know what you're doing there is diverting conversation away from how brilliant the anchors of the CBC are, Erika.
Yeah, I didn't even say deep on deep. No.
I see exactly what you're doing. Hey, so David Eby, I mean, there's like recounts at play and everything's hanging in the balance and nobody knows what's going to happen. And then like 10 days after the election, we finally know that David Eby can kind of breathe a sigh of relief, although I guess now his work's really starting. Cheryl, how much sort of attention, obviously you're paying attention across the country, but I know that you were laser focused on what was going on in Saskatchewan. Was everybody kind of collectively holding their breath about the outcome in BC too?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, I mean, I was focused on Saskatchewan, but never took an eye off BC because watching, a lot of friends and colleagues working on that campaign there. And then we actually had people who left the BC campaign to come help us in Saskatchewan once it was over. So when the final count finished and we ended up with 47, there was like a cheer that broke out in the Sask NDP office in their support. So happy that they pulled it over a line because, like Erika says, a win is a win.
Yeah, a win is a win. Is this an indictment of Eby's policy? A lot of people are saying, sort of like he had sort of gleaned a bit of a reputation, like with the drug policy and all that kind of stuff, of like being a little more left than typical BC NDP supporters were accustomed to or comfortable with. Do you think there's some validity to that?
Yeah, I think anytime you end up like going from quite a healthy majority into just barely pulling an election off, it would be crazy not to be a little bit introspective and think about how you got there and what the next 4 years look like and whether what you've done since, he became leader 2 years ago to now is the right thing to do. And I think that's what the work that they are doing now is, take a moment, decide what's working, decide how they're going to govern over the next years, and really, listen to the message that was sent to them from voters, because the Conservatives kind of came out of nowhere and a lot of their messages were really popular and a lot of people grabbed onto them. And now it's the government's job, it's the NDP's job to sort of take those lessons and apply them to, politics, but also good public policy.
Erika, what do you read into the sort of this BC Conservative movement? It was it was just an absolute mess. We don't need to go through the whole history of it all. But like the kind of the collapse of the BC Liberals and then the sort of the rebrand and all of a sudden the guy that was kicked out of the party is back as the leader and then he almost wins the election.
I think this is going to be like a case study for years to come. I was saying is like when the UCP was merging, we were like, oh, this is like hard to merge two parties and go into an election and the process you got to go through. Then watched, Danielle Smith win and then go 6 months into that. Like there's that nerve. These guys did it in like 3 weeks.
It's
they
crazy.
merged. It's like, it's going to be a case study,
I disagree.
honestly.
Okay.
Oh, let's hear this.
Well, I mean, if you look at the polls in BC, the Conservatives were actually up ahead of the NDP before the BC United collapsed into them. And if you look at the polls on election day, after the BC United collapsed into them, the BC United didn't run anybody. Effectively, those parties merged and ran as one party. The vote did not coalesce behind them because that piece moved off into the NDP and ultimately helped them win the election. So I would not say that they effectively merged their parties. I would say that the BC United vote split, and it split in favor of the NDP.
Well, and maybe I wouldn't say that they like officially merged. I think there's a lot of housekeeping that's still happening with like some of the nominations, and they still had candidates running under the BC United banner. But I would say like this party that was kind of like nothing to a lot of people, like in 2 years ago or a year ago, all of a sudden came in and is forming official opposition. Like, I think that's still a win of folding in a lot of their candidates and going through that process. Like, I've lived the process of nominations, and like, that's just, it's pretty incredible. I think that's a win. And now they're the official opposition. It's kind of crazy. I think.
You think is Rustad the leader? Like, there,
I'm like, yes.
He
Is
got
this
him.
a trick question?
No, it's not like, no, I don't mean today.
Yeah.
But is he the guy?
I mean, I think after you do that feat, similar to the opposite, I guess, of what we talked about with Scott Moe, like this guy got them there. I think
because Jason Kenney might remember Jason Kenney talked about your former boss as the accidental government. Rachel Notley was the accidental premier. Like, I almost wonder if John Rustad, respectfully, actually, it's quite disrespectful what I'm about to say, is like he's like the accidental opposition. Like people are. I think people already probably even within
I think
that
you're
party
more
are going,
forgiving
is
though.
he the guy?
If that is the case, like, I think that you're more forgiving of an accidental opposition than you would be of a government.
Of course.
So I don't know. I don't think it would have the same implications that, say, we saw the impact of Rachel Notley. I actually want to ask Cheryl. She's in the House more, like, so much now, very different. Like, what's her strategy there? Because like then she's not. Like, I'm like, it's still Rachel Notley's party. Like, I just want your take on
Christina Gray's the House leader, of course, right? But
Rachel's there, and she kind of wasn't during leadership. Like, she, did her job or whatever. But like,
purpose,
usually,
she stayed out of it.
Yeah, but usually, like, Alison Redford, Jason Kenney were like not present, but like Rachel's there. And I get that, like, I'd love to know when she's where he's gonna run, who's gonna step down, what he's gonna do. But yeah, like, she's there, and it's like just it's an anomaly, I think, from anything I've seen.
Cheryl?
Yeah, I mean, I think she's just having a great time. Like, if you think about,
she's like,
Rachel
I don't
Notley's
care, I'll do
career,
whatever I want.
Like, she's never got to just like enjoy really, like, being a backbencher in a big opposition, in the official opposition. She was, one of two at a time in the NDP, one of four at a time in the NDP. Eventually became leader, and then her time in government has been, in the highest levels, running the government, serving as leader of the party when we lost in 2019. Like, now she finally gets to just like relax and like be an MLA, and I think she's just really enjoying that.
Yeah, she might kind of like have to jump in from time to time. Although it's probably, like, her way better than I do, Cheryl, but I would imagine you got to kind of be careful there too. It's like,
yeah, it's still Rachel's party.
Another sports metaphor coming,
good.
but LeBron can't come in and like save Bronny from getting embarrassed for the Lakers,
Can we just
right?
say how cool that was, though?
So cool.
It was so cool.
And
My TikTok, it was
Bronny
like...
scores his first 2 points on the court in Cleveland, where he grew up watching Dad. So cool. But you get what I'm saying. But nobody's going to take Bronny James seriously if LeBron if LeBron's bailing him out. LeBron's got to let him sink or swim, and Notley's got to do that. I'm not comparing Nenshi.
And I think she is.
My metaphor is flawed because Nenshi is not Bronny, but work with me.
Cheryl
And he also
McDavid.
doesn't have a seat in the House.
He doesn't. He's not even there.
So like, it is like,
his
certainly
choice.
Rachel's supportive of Naheed, and will do whatever she can to support his leadership. I remember her saying, like, I'm going to be such a good, like, just MLA, and I was like, you cannot even sit in the backseat of a car, so good luck with that. Without telling a driver how to drive. But she's very self-aware. Obviously she's having a good time. She has great relationships in there, but like, certainly there to support Naheed Nenshi as the leader and make sure that he can be successful and make sure that, his vision for what the next 3 years looks like is what's being implemented.
So is he going to run in her seat, though?
In whose? Rachel's?
Rachel's. Like,
He would have to not sit there.
But is she going to be there forever? Like,
well, no, but I don't think you got to get Nenshi in Calgary. So here's what I'm hearing. Here's what
Lethbridge.
Here's what my sources are telling me, Cheryl, and you can let me know if you think there's fire where there's smoke. But my obvious conclusion, and this is unfair to the former finance minister, and he may have words with me if he hears about this, but I think that Joe Ceci is the obvious candidate to probably tap out and pave the way for Naheed Nenshi to get a seat in Calgary. But the rumor is that Ceci has no interest in leaving. What are you hearing?
Okay, so Joe CC is a good friend of mine, and if you can ever get Joe to tell you the truth about what his plans are, or what like tomorrow looks like, or what his, like, God bless you, because I cannot get him to tell me that.
But would you agree that that makes obvious sense? It's a he's had an esteemed political career. It's right in the heart of Calgary. It's where you got to put like what three
the middle of her orange map.
The 3-term mayor of Calgary can't have. I mean, the premier of Alberta is, her seat is not where she lives. Everybody knows that. Yeah. People can litigate that. I don't like the optics of it. I think you should represent where you live, or at least the city you call home. Do both of you agree? I mean, what are you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, she would have preferred to go run in her riding.
Yeah,
the nomination happened, so that was unfortunate. And Roger Reid decided to leave, like in a way that I don't think was opportunistic for Danielle Smith. I know she would have preferred to run in her riding. It was who was willing to step aside immediately so that she could be in the House, which I think is like the criticism of Naheed.
Like if
like
Naheed
if your caucus likes you so much, why is someone not stepping aside? I agree.
If
Joe
he was
CC
desperate to get into the House, he could run in Lethbridge right now and win.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah. And he could change. Like, I mean, I don't think that that's fair to the people of Lethbridge. And similar, like if Premier Smith left Medicine Hat, like in the next election, right? Like, that's now her constituency. He could, or get someone within your own party to step aside. Mm-hmm. Right. That's usually traditionally what happens.
Have you ever engineered something like that, Cheryl?
Never.
No.
I've never engineered anything, Ryan.
No. I'm sorry I even suggested that either of you would be doing that. I want to give a shout out to Stephanie, who just kicked $10 into our YouTube super chat. Amazing. She says, happy Friday to the very best podcast, the Real Talk team, the Real Talkers in the chat, and these two guests. She says, thank you. Real Talk daily is my brain food. How amazing is that? Erika,
is her second favorite the Discourse?
Well, I would imagine. We don't have to save the announcement. You guys are back next week. People have been wondering when the pod's coming back.
Well, you just told our announcement for us.
Oh, sorry. Hey, Erika, when's the pod coming back?
I'm going to throw to my good friend Cheryl to make an announcement.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
No, we're back next week, and we're excited because I've missed our banter. Yeah. I only got to see Cheryl like on Strava running and trying to keep some lifestyle balance during this last month. So
in the off.
Erika texted me like every day when I was in Saskatchewan. And in Saskatchewan, I'm not kidding, I worked like at least 14 hours a day and only thought about the Saskatchewan election. And I would get a text from Erika like every day. So what about the Discourse? When are we bringing the Discourse back? So
maybe it was my strategy, Cheryl, distract you.
Just like break me.
It's like
so I got back last week and we're ready to go. We're going to relaunch next week. So
awesome.
Really excited about that.
In the off chance that folks aren't familiar with the podcast, I'm pretty sure everybody knows, but I just love the dynamic. It's like a high level. Cheryl's obviously had Sherika.
Cheryl.
Have you ever thought of
teamed name.
Oh my gosh! But Cheryl, obviously, with a long and storied career with the NDP, and Erika, your roots with the UCP, and I just love how you guys come together. Obviously, like each other personally, but couldn't be more different politically, and I just think it's a winning formula. So welcome back. That'll be a fresh new season of the Discourse.
Lots to talk about.
Yeah, no kidding. When we come back, this chat is ready for us to get into to head to Red Deer, and so that's exactly what we'll do with Erika and Cheryl in 60 seconds. First, I want to remind you what's happening at Athabasca University, and this is a particularly amazing opportunity for First Nations, Indigenous, Métis, and Inuit students. The board of directors, this was September 1st, I think they made this decision. A couple of months ago, they're dropping tuition fees by 10% for students with Indigenous, Métis, or Inuit heritage as part of their mission to make this university more accessible, for there to be more equity there, for students and faculty and staff to be particularly proud of it. It's an important step in AU's ongoing commitment with Indigenous peoples in Canada and to the principles of truth and reconciliation. There is an AU advantage no matter where you are. When it comes to this online university, your only commute is to your device. You can find out more about the programs, courses, and other financial supports by visiting athabascau.ca today. I absolutely love the positive reflection this week. I'm not sure if you saw it, but these volunteer first responders from Vancouver, Edmonton, and Calgary over doing high-risk rope training for Ukraine's emergency services as Russians continue to target apartment buildings and hospitals. We focus on those good news stories. First episode of every week, courtesy of our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy. If you have a story that just warmed your heart, restored your faith in humanity, encouraged you, send it to talk@ryanjesperson.com with positive reflections in the subject line. That's proudly presented by Kubi Renewable Energy. Hey, they're hiring right now. You're going, seriously? A solar company's hiring heading into winter? They are. That's how serious they are about getting the best talent in the business. Check out the careers link today at kubienergy.ca.
All right, let's look at these gals on Halloween here.
Okay, here for the podcast listeners, you're gonna have to describe your costumes for us, Johnny. Who do we have up
We'll go
first?
Cheryl
We got
first
the Halloween.
here, yeah.
Oh, Cheryl, tell us about this adorable image. Who's this?
So I didn't choose my Halloween costume here. This is my daughter, Rio, who is obviously Snow White and really wanted me to be the evil queen. So we went all out and I got this evil queen costume and we watched Snow White together wearing the costumes. And this is how we trick-or-treated last night.
I absolutely love it. Let's
It's
see,
adorable.
Erika,
Mine
what did
is
you go
like
as?
so scary. So my
cute.
stepdaughter and I usually try and dress the same. She loves Halloween as much as I do. And she wanted to go as vampire. She's like getting into Twilight and stuff like that. And so I obviously didn't take inspiration from Twilight. I went all out with a scary vampire with blood coming down. And then the coffins that are behind, we had like those pop-up coffins and I jumped out of one. To scare children.
Very well done, Johnny. I'll show my Instagram here. We went as the Pumpkin Patch crew. So as you can see, Carrie Ann is the farmer here. She's raising these pumpkins. Wyatt, our 9-year-old, is the freaky, scary pumpkin. 2-year-old Noah is like the adorable kiddo little pumpkin, and I am the crow. So I guess Wyatt doubling as a scarecrow there, the scary pumpkin scarecrow, and I am the crow that he is trying
That's
to
like a
scare
good hybrid
off,
of
so-
adorable and a little scary.
Yeah, a little freaky. The crow mask just
Cherika
kept,
also did that.
the crow mask kept fogging up, and so I couldn't. So I had to lose it, and then I just looked like a Western reverend. Like
Yeah.
I kind of had a frock on and a cowboy hat. So I threw on a crucifix, and then this guy walks past me on the sidewalk, and he goes, "Nice, the Undertaker." And I was like, "Yes,
That's not.
yes."
That's not what we're doing
It's
here.
not even.
I went as election anxiety. Yeah, I reinforced the bags under my eyes with some makeup.
Yeah.
I had a bottle of whiskey and a pack of cigarettes.
Oh my God.
and a U.S. flag taped to my back.
An American flag. Yeah, with your bags packed.
Yeah.
Just in
Oh my
case.
gosh.
Sharon's reporting she had about 20 kids at the door last night. Lauren had 84. He knows exactly. Travis about 15. Alberta girl had 2. Mark says we had only 32 kids in Red Deer. It was very slow.
Only had a dozen
think it was
around
the
our
weather?
place.
Like,
Here's,
it was-
I think
yeah.
that it's everybody in Red Deer is bracing for a 10% boost in that town's population.
Well, it's an economic driver. They're all excited.
Well, I mean, but it actually is,
Yeah.
as the United Conservative Party's AGM is expected to draw between 6,000 and 7,000 people. They're saying
crazy.
you're going to be one of them.
I am.
You think Danielle Smith is safe heading into this leadership review this weekend?
Yes.
How come?
Well, I mean, one, the rules are 50% plus one. So, like, anyone that's going to come,
You know she has to
I'm
resign if
finishing
she
my
gets-
sentence.
Okay.
I'm like, everyone that's like, you have to have this exact number, you have to have this, like, they're pulling it out of their ass. Like, that there's no statistical evidence saying what number you need to get. I'm sure she has figured out what her threshold is. Haven't asked. I don't care. I want like 50%. I think she'll be fine. But at the same time, like, I think there's going to be a lot of 2-minute Tories that we see this weekend and I don't know if it's from the organization on the left or the far right. What's going to happen? This is like, as you mentioned earlier, this is like the biggest in Canadian history. I will say for the record, I don't love that we do this as a party. We didn't have leadership roles till I think year 3. Usually it's if you lose a general election, a leadership review is triggered. This is, I don't think, the healthiest for, someone that just came off an election. And if she doesn't pass, we go into a leadership review. Like it's I don't love it, but I just want it to be over. I think she'll be fine though.
What are you thinking, Cheryl? It's interesting. Erika says, whether this comes from the left or the far right, because both are organizing right now to take her down, and obviously Smith's supporters are just going to have to out-organize those others. But we've seen some pretty prominent heel turns. I mean, I wouldn't say that David Parker was ever particularly, Take Back Alberta founder, particularly in Danielle Smith's corner, but he was supporting her for his own purposes. Now he's not. Now he's calling for her head. You look like you don't think it's a big deal. But
I think David Parker was irrelevant a while ago. But
okay, and maybe
I mean, he's still talking.
Maybe he is,
but the movement isn't.
The movement's
Well, I think
not.
it's more fractured though. Like I would say, Take Back still exists, but it's like little fiefdoms, I call it.
Okay.
Versus like what I think David would like it to be, which is a dictatorship, which is ironic because that's the exact opposite of grassroots. So
okay, Cheryl,
Erika has no personal feelings about this.
No, I know.
No, it's obvious she barely cares at all. She doesn't feel threatened at all by it.
No, I'm not threatened by
it's
David
irrelevant.
Parker.
Cheryl, what are you expecting to see out of Red Deer this weekend?
I mean, I think like leading up to this, I've been really concerned. And I think, as you see like the people turning out, this is year one after Danielle Smith was elected, and she has very transparently catered to a fringe side of her party for the last months, implementing policy that she didn't run on, implementing policies that are certainly not the priorities of the majority of Albertans, and really moving her party much further in terms of governing to the right in order to pass a leadership. Like, if we're doing this over and over again, it's the people of Alberta who will suffer. And to say like, yes, we have little like fiefdoms or whatever, we don't have a leader, Take Back Alberta doesn't have a leader anymore, but like these people are very, very organized and very motivated to come out and vote. That's why we have thousands of people in Red Deer this weekend, and either they get their way or they vote Danielle Smith out. And that is that is bad for all Albertans except for those 6,000 people who are going to vote for her.
Plain Power says, therein lies the problem with political parties. Politicians work for the party, not the constituents. This is the opposite of democracy. I don't know if I agree. I do think that what's happening this
I think
weekend
it's the opposite of a grassroots.
Sure.
Base,
I mean, there's kind of like, it's interesting because a party can do whatever it wants. And we were briefly talking about, I told you I was looking forward to picking your brain on this, both of you, on the minimum age for party memberships. And on one hand, I think, the United Conservatives can do whatever they want, but at 14 years of age, you can buy a membership. And there's a lot of talk around, and let's be honest, I mean, first of all, 3 white people
I don't even know how many 14-year-olds we
I'm
have.
going to talk about these. I'm going to talk about the trend that we're seeing on social media and people invoking the word Muslim, and people are saying they're getting busloads of Muslims. I mean, it's just like some people are using it like it's like they're bringing busloads of Muslims to Red Deer to vote. And they're going to be 14 years old, and everybody's paying for their party memberships, and they're going to vote the way that their parents tell them to. And it's got a lot of people going, is 14 an appropriate age for a party membership? You could argue yes to say getting them politically engaged early, getting kids, teenagers in is great. You could vote no because, number one, what does a 14-year-old know about anything? And also a 14-year-old's vote is worth as much as a 54-year-old's vote? I don't know.
I think that'd be a very interesting segue to why parental rights are so important. But
well, sure. And I mean, if you will
if
open
you say
the
a
can on
14-year-old
parental
doesn't know
rights,
anything.
well,
but I do think that, I think it's great for kids on all parties that want to get involved. Like, I don't care if you want to go left, right, whatever. On the issue that you're talking about, I mean, I'm sure that there's going to be reporters waiting to see this bus. I don't know if it's real or not, or it's just all talk by an individual that wants to brag that they can organize. I don't agree with they're going to go vote the way their parents do. I think lots of people vote the way their parents are, even at in their 30s, what they were brought up on. I don't think that has anything to do with being 14 to 16 to be able to be a part of this. I don't like that.
I don't think the parental rights thing works in your favor on this one.
Well, I'm saying if you're saying a child that doesn't know
opposite.
anything
It's
at
the
14,
opposite.
why should they be able to decide?
But you're not saying that.
No, but
you're
not
saying these
that.
people have
You're saying they do know.
But I'm saying what Ryan
You're
said
saying-
was 14-year-olds don't know anything.
Sure, but I'm not the premier that's bringing in these sweeping
But
changes.
shouldn't you then support it?
No, I'm just saying if you're saying 14-year-olds do know and should be able to decide and
No,
should have
I'm
autonomy,
saying that a 14-year-old doesn't know, but
so
going
you're
to
saying
vote.
that
They
the
should be able to
UCP
vote?
should change its membership age? You're saying they don't know, but they should be able to vote?
It doesn't really. I don't think there's any
You're
14-year-olds
painted
in our
into
party.
a corner right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
There's
I don't know.
gonna
I don't decide this.
There's no
all these people.
14-year-olds now?
I don't know if there is any.
Oh, come on.
I don't know.
Oh, I guarantee
There's
this.
6,000 people,
buses
Ryan.
there.
I don't know who all these
There's going to
people
be a
are.
bunch of pizza parties for a bunch of teenagers because that's been the I'm not
Well, and then I'm saying, I think that would be interesting. I'm waiting to see this bus of all these quote unquote Muslims being bussed in. I
So
think
you're saying
media.
that it's
I
not
don't think
gonna
it's. I don't
happen?
think it's real. I think it was someone bragging.
I think
that they
it's- I
think that they're
it's
doing this.
easy to understand example of how this convention has been organized, that Danielle Smith, rather than governing for the people of Alberta on the platform that she ran on last year, has been catering to the little groups that make up her fragile coalition. And one of them is private schools. And one of them is people who are anti-vax. And one of them is people who hate windmills blocking their views of the mountains. And when you bring all those people together and she can say, I did that for you, and I did that for you, and I did that for you, this is the group that makes up these little niches of, hundreds and thousands of people at a time, which do not represent the priorities of Albertans. This is who the premier is catering to.
Well, and I would say, I think it's going to be interesting to see if that actually does happen. I think it was someone speaking at a turn, bragging about their abilities, and they can't deliver that, trying to go out. I think that's what's going to happen. And
Who's the someone?
I don't know.
Oh.
I just heard a recording.
I think you do.
I think you know exactly who it was. Yeah, yeah. But
interesting.
So what? I'll go to Cheryl first on this one. The Danielle Smith's government introducing on Halloween, basically on October 31st, changes to parental notification on pronoun changes at school. Obviously, changes to gender reassignment surgeries with youth in Alberta. And I just want to say on the record that is not a thing for purposes of clarity and conversation with integrity. Alberta Health Services has released that there were exactly 0 bottom surgeries, as they're called, performed on minors in Alberta between 2022 and 2024. There were 8 surgeries. I'm not a physician. I'm going to call them breast reduction surgeries, basically, but however they would qualify, 8 over nearly 24 months in a province of nearly 5 million people. So this is really not a thing. And the provincial government also says that it's going to limit the participation of transgender women in women's sports. And also for purposes of clarity, I think that polling shows that the general
competitive
sports, I think that the general public actually polls in favor
that one.
Of that policy. So I think that we maybe look at each one of these policies on their own, but obviously, Cheryl, no mistake that this is put out 2 days before the AGM.
Well, that was leading.
Well, I mean, that's my job. I'm a talk show host. I lead into questions.
We saw this in January. It was disgusting in January. It's even more disgusting when it is so clearly and transparently political, that the premier is using a really vulnerable, marginalized group as her, attack, as her target, so that she can get her votes in her AGM. It's gross. And as you said, it's not happening in the first place. This is not an issue. This is not a number one priority. I think the premier should be out there fixing the issues that are in the education system. I think the premier should be out there getting the tax break to people that she promised when she ran in the election last year. This is a niche issue that doesn't even make sense for the government to come between parents, their doctors, and their kids. And it's so transparently political leverage just for political points. And if she had done it in a little bit different timing, maybe it wouldn't be so transparent. But on the eve of her leadership vote, it's gross.
It has nothing to do with the economy. It has nothing to do with
I want my
healthcare.
tax credit. The premier knows that. I'm that's what I want. But I do think that, coming back to the policy, I think there's pieces that are good. There's pieces that I agree with. There's pieces that I'm is that really important? I do think, though, she talked about it how long ago she, did her video. You can be critical of her releasing a video. She's talked about it. The legislature came back. How is she not going to introduce the 2 bills that she's been talking about for months? Well, I do think, Cheryl, there is issues in classrooms on the pronouns. There is issues with kids on the affirmation of care that, what education does a teacher have?
8 people
on the surgeries. And I'll say, I come from small government, get the hell out of my house. That is the piece of the policy that I don't love. And it's actually not because of what they're doing. I think what the intention is right. What I don't like is that to me is nanny stating, telling someone how to live their life. So the policy I think is right. I just don't like that it tells someone how to live their life on the parental issue.
Policy is literally telling people how to live their lives.
I like the parental rights, but I like it that it's the parent should choose, I think, on transitioning.
But we're not talking. This is
on
not
the surgeries.
This is not
everything else.
Purely a pronoun bill. This is not a pronoun bill. We've seen.
I know. I'm talking about the surgeries
also
that I don't like.
The pronoun bill is deeply unnecessary and also targeting a vulnerable group that doesn't need to be targeted.
Why, Cheryl, why do you believe in affirmation of care?
Let me finish. This is the furthest in Canada of any government. It is absolutely unnecessary. It's a tiny, tiny portion of the population who are seeking medical care for medical professionals who have spent their whole careers studying this and working in concert with their parents. And the government comes in and says, no, parents. No, medical professionals who have spent their whole career specializing in this. Danielle Smith knows better. And that to me is a far, far overreach for someone who fiercely defends her jurisdiction, and also completely unnecessary. You're actually rolling back parental rights by saying, I'm not going to let you do with your child what you think is best for your child.
And that's
and
where
it makes a whole bunch of people who have no say in any of this, who haven't even in many cases connected with someone going through this, it makes them happy.
So what I'm saying,
and that's how we're going to run the province.
Right. But what I'm saying is the pronoun thing, I completely support. I think that like a teacher affirming someone's pronouns or who they are or what they are, like, I think that there needs to be more questions of the why. Those children should get like proper support.
But who's
to
saying those
navigate
questions
that.
aren't being asked?
Most of the time, like, talk to any teacher. They're like, oh, we just changed names, or why wouldn't the parents know? Okay, so let's separate this. I'm not disagreeing with you on, I like this policy as a whole on parental choice. Where I disagree with this government, and I've told them this, is on, it's kind of contradictory on the allowing parents to choose if their children should go through this transition or take hormones. Like, to me, that's nanny stating, in the sense that, like, that's the one piece of the legislation I can't personally get behind. One, because I've never lived through an experience like that, but also I think it should come down to the parents. If parents want their children to do X, Y, and Z, change their name, take hormones, whatever, like that, to me, I'm like, that's fine if that's a parental choice. I do think, however, we need to be very clear that, like, a doctor and a teacher, unless they have specialty within that ability to navigate something this complex, so a general physician, I don't think has the ability to say, oh, here, let's give you this. Let's
More
get
than
specialists.
the health minister, though.
And fair point. But I'm saying, like, again, I like this for the parental choice. Where I struggle with this policy is on the fact that parents don't have that choice on the lower than 16 on doing these things.
I'm going to jump in, and I'm not just like trying to ride the fence here and muddy the waters. I will say
you are.
No, I'm just saying, like, I'm a parent,
Yeah.
and I love my kids more than anything, and nobody loves my kids more than me. And I do want to be an intimate part of my kids, every part of my kid's life. So I understand how parents feel that way, and I understand how this can be torqued politically. I also recognize that some kids, home is not a safe space, and these are the kids we're talking about, and I want to have these conversations in good faith. I appreciate where both of you are coming from. James says in the chat, James says Alberta's going the furthest in North America, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. Jen says the premier is governing for the party, not the province. These are not the issues that people care about, which are affordability and healthcare. Ellen says, I think Danielle Smith focusing on trans kids is a distraction from important things that are dying in our province. I want to know who sits around thinking about kids not having trans surgeries. Like, is that an actual issue? Mm-hmm. I wonder if Danielle Smith, in her quiet moments, is looking at what happened to Blaine Higgs getting absolutely smoked in New Brunswick, losing his own seat, not just losing government. And if you look at kind of what the scuttlebutt around Higgs was that, you know, he was the first to introduce a policy like this, didn't actually go as far. He refused to deny the sort of kitty litter rumor that elementary kids are identifying as cats and peeing in kitty litter in classrooms. I mean, it started getting really nutty. Yeah. And he gets smoked. And I wonder if Smith can't help but look at that and go, I better tread carefully here, because once she passes this
Clearly
leadership,
not.
And I think she
doubled down.
My guess is that she has no problem in the leadership review. That's my guess on the record. I think she'll do fine this weekend. But after this, she's got to start getting that ship back into, like, regular zones.
Listen, I'm a fiscal conservative first, so, like, I want to see, like, I said, I wasn't super thrilled with the last budget. I didn't think it was, like, as fiscally responsible as it could be. Like, that's what I want to see going forward. But I've always wanted to see that. I think that this is an issue that, like, as a parent also, like, parental rights are very important, because, like you said, we all love our kids and no one's going to love them more. And we will always do what we believe is in the best interest of our children, which is why I love all of those things. Like, let's keep them safe in their competitive sports. Let's keep them safe in I think a lot of families actually just accept the pronoun change or the name change or anything like that. Like, I think what I don't agree with in this policy, again, is that it's not a parental decision for their children on some of the other stuff, like the hormone therapies. But I do think, I don't like affirming care, that we just default to it. I think there needs to be more, and specialists.
No one defaults to it. It's with
Cheryl, family doctors can make this. They don't have the expertise to go through. Like, it's a psychiatrist.
A family
and it's
doctor
a
is not
counselor.
offering a top surgery. Like, come on.
But they're giving hormones. They're allowed to.
Puberty blockers.
But these
Yeah,
are-
or sorry.
about?
Yeah, sorry.
Like,
puberty blockers.
so you're
thank you.
telling me that
They can do that.
Danielle Smith knows more than the family doctor. Like maybe a family doctor is not an
I would
expert in
say-
gender affirming
I would
care,
say-
but I
Oh,
think they know a little
geez.
bit more than Danielle
What?
Smith.
Nothing. I just can't wait for you to say it. What are you about to
I was just
say?
going to say, I think neither of them do. I think parents can work with their kids, and it should be psychologists, not doctors, because you can go into the emergency and say, I identify as Sam, and they change your health care card or your ID. There's numerous cases that I know that
They'll
happens.
change your
This-
bracelet.
the
They'll change your
bracelet.
bracelet like what they're gonna refer to you as while you're there.
But then your prescriptions,
they're
how
not-
do you get
They're not,
prescriptions?
they're not
on
issuing a
insurance?
new driver's license.
Like,
They're not
who
issuing a
cares?
new
But
birth
what? But
certificate.
Cheryl, like people care, parents care. Affirming
but,
care
like,
on
we're not
someone
talking
that
about
you
parents.
brought
Most
into this
people-
world.
The kids that are 15 do not have driver's license that they're going to change. Like we're talking,
And how
of
do you get
course, I have a
insurance?
child too. I care about my child. I want to be deeply involved with my child. I want to be there for every big decision that she makes. But this protection isn't for parents like us. This is for kids that can't go home and tell their parents the truth. This is for parents, the kids that will, are not going home to a safe space.
Right. It's for
These
all
kids are
parents that want to
targeted.
know about their kids,
These
though.
kids are targeted. They are hurting themselves. There's more, suicide within these groups. You can see that is actually in the statistics. Danielle Smith
But
is
then I would
relying
say it's
on
a
zero
bigger
statistics.
problem than pronouns. If they can't go home and be safe, that's not a safe home. That's a different level
But
of intervention if you're talking about what you're talking about.
Policy, the reason that kids are allowed to have this safe space without an automatic trigger to their parents is so that they are safe.
Well,
So
then
that
they
teachers
shouldn't
can
be in
make the
their home,
determination that they
Cheryl.
are
Like, then
safe.
there needs to be intervention. If you can't do this
But
with your
let's-
parents, so many kids are scared, and then their parents are very welcoming. And again, these parents brought kids into your life. You are under guardianship until you're 18 years old for a reason, so that your parents can make your best choices for you. If you're not safe, Cheryl, then that's a
When it
bigger
works for
conversation.
you.
That's not
When
just
it
I'm going to
works for you.
hide and like do this at school, and that puts everyone in an awkward situation. If those kids are not in safe spaces, that should be a totally different, elevated situation.
I think Danielle Smith should be talking to the people who are actually influenced by these policies to say, what does it mean for you if your teachers are going to out you to your family? What is the danger to you if your teachers are going to out you to your family, if your counselor is going to out you to your family? And listening to the front lines of those people, because we saw this when the GSA, this was the beginning of the end for Jim Prentice, when people said they were going to out kids at school because they couldn't be in gay straight alliances. This was the beginning of the end. People rallied on the legislature to say we're going to keep these
But
kids
then how
safe,
come
and
this
is
still
not
has
that
such
much
great
different.
support?
What's that?
This policy still has good support. It hasn't shifted. It hasn't
No,
shifted
of
since they
course,
introduced
when you
it.
ask people, do you agree that parents should be involved in their children's lives? Of course they say yes. Like, come on, when you ask the question,
So
do you
then
want to
why
be
the
involved? Do you want to
parents-
know what's going on in your kid's life?
Why
Of
doesn't that
course they
blanket
say
to all
yes.
parents then? You're isolating a group of parents. And again, if those kids aren't safe, that's a totally different conversation than changing your name.
I know, but it's not just like this. Those kids aren't safe. Take them out. Like, let's keep those kids safe because
Brian's
they are
like,
at
talk
home.
about this on your podcast
Well,
next
no,
week.
no. I mean, I'm happy to have a conversation like this.
Yeah.
I think this is how real people talk, and these are people in good faith bringing their personal convictions. Super chat Ken, thanks for the contribution. Ken says, if you support the pronoun change, this legislation, you also need to increase funding for youth supports and shelters because kids being outed will end up on the streets. Wise Kyle says, Ryan, you need to push back on this NDP narrative, as I literally have the founding president of the UCP sitting 4 feet from me around the table. I think also I'd be curious to know, like, and you're right, the policy does poll with popularity and with encouraging numbers. And I think also a big part of that is the spin and the narrative on it, which is also focusing on, do you believe that trans women should be kept out of competitive women's sports? And the majority of Canadians, though they may not want to like put it on their Facebook status or announce it at work.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of quiet support for this on all fronts.
are
And
afraid
again,
to
I have
support
my
that
personal
publicly.
opinion about the surgeries and the hormone blockers, mainly because I think if the parents want it, sure. But I think there's way more support than Cheryl is pointing to. And she's pointing to like this group that, again, like I think that's a bigger issue. I think that there's lots of mental health issues that are tied around this. So why are we not focusing, again, the gentleman
With a
that
big
mentioned
investment
like,
in mental health.
Yeah, 100%. I agree. Right. And so I think that there's, again, like this is for those kids that don't feel safe. I think that's a bigger conversation than being able to change your identity in one place and not be able to do it at your home. And again, these parents that they're scared of might actually be very loving and welcoming. So I don't know. I think it's like a narrative that's like a little bit too fear mongering, Cheryl, on this issue.
You think that this side is fear mongering on this?
Well, you guys keep talking about it. Is that like every kid?
We're not talking about it.
I feel
no
like
one on the left wants to talk about this.
And she didn't launch his campaign on this issue and stand outside at like Lilac Fest?
This is not the priority of Albertans. This is not what the majority of people want to see their government
yet
working on.
This
is not what I would have liked
policy.
to see Danielle Smith focus on. This is a niche issue that is catering specifically to Danielle Smith's base. This is not what anybody, at least that I talk to, wants the government to be focusing on.
Well, I mean, I could argue the same when the NDP was in power. There was lots of things that
But
I
we're
didn't
not.
think. Yeah, because you lost.
Okay.
Just kidding.
I want to.
Exactly.
So let's. There's another resolution, and obviously I'm just picking and choosing here for purposes of conversation. There's going to be a million things that are happening, a million things that are voted on. Typically with AGMs, to be fair, there's always real talk. There's always wackadoodles that are putting stuff in front of the group, and then the odd time they've gleaned enough support that it passes.
Yeah.
These are called non-binding resolutions, and that's when Jason Kenney gave us that famous quote a number of years ago where he said, "I hold the pen," indicating to everybody, calm down, don't worry, we're not introducing this nuttery as legislation. However, UCP members out of Athabasca, Barhead, Westlock, shout out to my relatives in Westlock, and Red Deer South have the CAs, their constituency associations, have proposed that the party take the stance of removing the designation of CO2 as a pollutant and abandoning net zero targets in Alberta. Now, I can't help it. I love talking about stuff like this, but I'm just curious. Again, it's non-binding.
You know what? I do think, again, coming back, like, I'm a policy nerd. I usually get up at the mics. I'm not getting up at the mic this year because I think like some of this stuff is just going to pass because there's a lot of people that don't understand jurisdictional timelessness, all of these things.
Investment.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I think this is like an emotional thing, and like you can't vote on intention. You have to vote how it's written. I think that, and I haven't gone through them all because frankly, I'm like, they'll pass or not. I think that is one where the premier and the leader and the government have been pretty clear on where they sit on that, and that that'll be one that'll be like voted on. I'm sure there'll be some media asking about how the party's going to respond to it. I think that's like one of those non-bindings because the government's already taken a position. Even this stuff on talk on Bill of Rights, it's like that thing's already been tabled. Why are you talking about something that already exists and bringing forward policies like that? Again, I think we have some new members that maybe don't understand how the process works or what the interpretation is, and make it really clear that just because it passes on a policy floor doesn't mean that the government is going to adopt it.
But history should be pretty telling on this. Yes, there are always resolutions that come forward at party conventions that don't necessarily make it into legislation. But in this case, the group that's putting forward these resolutions at the UCP AGM is pretty powerful. And if you look at what they had on the floor last year and you look at how Danielle Smith has implemented her legislative agenda and what her priorities have been, I would say it matches up pretty closely. Everything that she's done over this legislative session over the last week, that's to appease those people who are putting resolutions on the floor at this AGM. And so to say, don't worry, everybody, I hold the pen, that has not been what the last year has told us.
So you want to bet? I bet that she doesn't entertain this policy.
Maybe not this one, but there are other dangerous, crazy policies that are going to come to the floor. And so far, we've seen that the UCP government is totally willing to entertain them.
I want to quickly shout out M. Aitken in our live chat by way of our super chat on YouTube, contributing $28. She says, in support of trans kids and the people that support them. M. Aitken, we're going to take that dough, we're going to match it, and we're going to flip it over and make a donation in your name and Real Talks to Youth Empowerment and Support Services. As a matter of fact, we'll match any donations in our YouTube live chat right now up to $500 going to yes.org, or you can, of course, donate directly, and we encourage you to support this life-saving support in the Metro Edmonton region. Before we thank you both for your time and move on, I know you got to get your ass down to Red
I'm
Deer.
literally going on. Yeah.
You're literally. I see your truck.
I think that happened
fueled up
last
and
year. We
ready
did
to
a
go.
podcast, and I was driving to Calgary.
I
right
appreciate
after.
it. One other story. I'm going to ask both of you this in closing. What's one other story? We haven't even talked federal politics. We can do that some other time. What's one other story you're keeping an eye on, either through this weekend from the AGM or elsewhere? You want to go first, Erika? One other story that you're watching, something you're expecting from the AGM, or something
Like in Alberta?
Well, it doesn't have to be, but something. I mean, I don't want to. I'm not interested in talking about Tim Houston in Nova Scotia right now.
Me neither.
Takes a bit of a risk. Calls an early election. We'll see what happens there. But
That worked well for Prentice.
Yeah, right. That's what I said.
You know what? I'm still really keen on watching all the stuff in BC because it's like such an interesting thing. Like, I mean, I went to bed before the results in Saskatchewan. They were late. I think it's interesting. Like, I can't even imagine all the pins and needles that these guys are walking on right now, and see how that interacts, who gets speaker, how this is all working out. I'm still kind of hooked on this like nerdy case study of BC. So that's what I'm watching. And I just want this weekend to be done and the leadership to be over.
How about you, Cheryl? One other story you're keeping an eye on, something we haven't discussed.
It's so hard to not pay attention to what's going on in the U.S. Just because we narrow in on election day. I unfortunately, there's lots going on in Canadian politics, and for sure I'll be watching the UCP AGM, but I will definitely be keeping my eye on the American election as well.
Who do you think's going to win?
I am manifesting Kamala.
Yeah. Who do you think's going to win?
I think Trump will pull it off.
Yeah.
Like, I think I'm not saying I support him. Once I got shit on for saying that he did well on a comment on Twitter, and I didn't say I supported him. I think it's like they're both not ideal cases for the U.S. Like, I don't think either candidate's awesome.
Yeah.
I think Trump will be elected.
Johnny, you sticking with your Kamala pick?
Yeah, I think it's going to edge out, and I looked again every morning. I get up and refresh early voting numbers, and I know early voting numbers, we talked about this yesterday. Trump's a disturber ever since he started running.
He's like, we're doing so well. We're the best ever.
Yeah, but you're looking at one factor alone. It's like 60-40 women to men are coming out. And then, but still, I look today, it's split down the middle for those early votes and the mail-in ones. It looks like 42 to 38.
It's going to be so close, though. Like,
I don't know though.
Really?
I don't know if it's going to be close. I think it's going to be close, but I think it'll be decisive enough for Harris that maybe we won't have to have recount fucking conversations for fucking
years?
10 years after this. But hey, can I say one thing? My 10 seconds on
you can say
on
more
voting
than 10
when you're
seconds.
14 years old, I am against it, and I think the chat's going to be like, "What, Johnny? We thought you'd be for it." No,
can I ask what the NDP is?
no
Cheryl?
fucking
I don't know.
way. Can you imagine?
I can't remember.
Is it 16? Sorry, Johnny.
Johnny, go ahead.
No, I'm letting these girls cook in here.
No,
today.
I know.
It's so
I know.
hot.
But,
I'm eating popcorn
but,
back here.
But your point is,
If in North America in general, 14 years of voting, we're gonna have Jake Paul as president in the States. Fucking Justin Bieber here. Fuck that. But I will say that knowing politics by the time you're 14 and knowing yourself, tying it into parental rights, your inner voice since you were born, is a totally different thing. I'll just say that.
okay, Cheryl, pick it up there.
I actually don't know what the NDP's voting age is. It's teenager though. I think it's 16.
Oh yeah.
It's probably 16, I would guess. I think federally we do 14 too.
Ryan's going.
I'm going as fast as I can
Yeah,
here.
type
but
Ryan. I'll start-
no, it's bringing up the constitution of the party. So
The federal one that they're tied to?
No, the Alberta NDP at albertandp.ca. Every resident of Alberta who is 14 years of age or older
Wow, already?
and agrees to abide by the Constitution and who is not a member or
glad I asked
supporter of
this
another
question.
party shall be eligible to
But-
apply for
Wow,
membership
I had
in the
no
party.
idea about that.
You will note that during this conversation, when you watch it back, I said nothing about 14-year-olds not being able to vote in the leadership.
No, you didn't. You
No,
were
you didn't.
consistent. You were consistent.
Ryan was just attacking me.
Yeah. It's a fair question. Make sure if you don't already subscribe to the Discourse on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts that you do. They've got another episode, a new season kicking off next week. We love when we have a chance to connect with these two. It's Cheryl Oates and Erika Barootes. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
And I want to thank Real
Thank you.
Talkers. Yeah, amazing job for both of you. The studio audience.
That's from the
loved
chat
it.
who just love the fire.
Live
in
chat.
here
Well,
today.
I want to give a shout out to the live chat and keep in mind Real Talk, our parent company Relay will match funds up to $500 donations donations in the Super Chat right now.
Probably the most we've had in about 6 months.
I think it's ever, maybe. But for youth empowerment and support services at yes.org, Ken for 20, Plain Power, Travis and Justin, we see your donations. Grumpy Canuck, I see yours. Super Chat Ken with another 15, Denis with 10, Noob Try Again with 5. We appreciate it. So we're going to make a nice donation here to yes.org. If you have to go, I get it. You don't have to hang out because I'm about to go on a whole thing here.
There
was just an interesting Twitter thread, and like Trump supporters aren't going to like this. But David Roberts, I saw this yesterday, and I want to read it. He runs a podcast called Volts. It's about clean energy and politics. Dr. Volts is his Twitter handle. He says, I'm glad I don't have to write an endorsement piece because I really wouldn't know how to go about it. Ever since 2015, when Trump descended the escalator, I had the same feeling, which I've never quite articulated. So I'm going to try. He says, it's basically this. Trump is so obviously, manifestly repugnant. His words, his gestures, his behavior, his history, that it strikes me like a tsunami. It's like a kind of total, perfect, seamless repugnance that I've never witnessed before in my life, which means pointing out some particular piece of the repugnance and arguing against it feels surreal. Like, he's regularly sexually assaulted women, almost certainly raped a few, and I think that's bad. Yeah, I mean, I think rape is bad, but here's the thing. If you think rape is bad, you'll already oppose Trump. And if you don't, what could I possibly say to reach you? I don't understand your moral universe, your basic precepts. We are so different in a way so fundamental that I literally don't know how to speak to you. It's the same with all of it. I could point to an obvious bit of repugnance. I think it's bad to cheat every small business you interact with, but it's obvious. You surely see it yourself and it doesn't matter to you. So how is me pointing it out going to help? He says, you see what I'm getting at? I feel like there's nothing I can say about Trump that isn't obvious, that isn't well understood public knowledge. And if you still support him at this point, you clearly don't care about all that stuff. And if you don't care about all that stuff, then what do you care about? How does your brain operate? What does morality mean to you? What language could possibly reach you? What could cause you to care? I genuinely don't know. It's like when you're trying to speak with someone who doesn't speak your language. That from Dr. Volts on Twitter, David Roberts, which I thought was really powerful. So thought I'd wrap with that in conversation about Trump. You're like, no, seriously, I got to go.
Yeah, I was like, I stayed. No, I'm kidding.
There you go. Goose for 20 says, thank goodness for yes. Love it. Tracy for another 20. Going to Youth Empowerment Support Services. Absolutely love it, Real Talkers. Thanks very much. I want to give a shout out to Complete Care Restoration before we get into our weekly tradition, and that is the Flamethrower. It's a UCP edition, actually, Erika. You might want to stick around. More than 25 years of experience, Complete Care Restoration has restoring properties, rebuilding peace of mind, and that includes in communities that were really, really impacted by wildfires this summer. But that's not all they do. If you've got smoke damage, flood damage, sewer backup, whatever, a nightmare on your hands, don't wait for the problem to get worse. You're going to want to contact Complete Care Restoration today. They've got staff, team members trained up that treat every project like it's their own, which really, really is something we can say personally. They built our studio. We've seen them at work. That's why we're proud to recommend Complete Care Restoration. Want to let you know that our panelists do see the live chat as well. The messages you're sending to them. Sylvia, thank you for your $20. We appreciate it. As we wrap every week, courtesy of our friends, the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, that's Palisades, Namao, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road, we ask you, Real Talkers, for your hot takes. We want you to fire up your own flamethrowers. That's right. These are all real emails to talk@ryanjesperson.com, presented by the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. This one from Brendon, who's writing in about the Jordan Peterson Law. Danielle Smith put in front of Alberta, says, I love the show, and I'm usually down for seeing both sides of an issue, but this Jordan Peterson Law has me all riled up. Taking away any power to hold professionals accountable for their public conduct is at worst idiotic, and in my view, a conniving and vindictive way of eroding institutions that may get in the way of UCP policy with pesky science. If we want to take the whole trans rights issue as an example, the point of gender-affirming care isn't to mollycoddle people or to promote cutting off genitalia, which is, of course, not actually happening. The fucking point is to prevent suicide. 1 in 3 trans youth attempt suicide. And how far is therapy going to go if kids are hanging from the rafters, wonders Brendon. It's nuanced, and there are occasionally just confused kids exploring what their identity is, of course. But why the hell is it more important for all these people to point out the small minority of outliers than to provide care that is proven to prevent suicide in this population? Get kids stable and safe and sort out the nuance later. Calling out this junk is undermining a methodology proven to keep kids alive. That's why there's ethics around public statements by professionals. It's not because the professional body is all left-wing nut jobs. It's that there are ramifications to the care of all patients that are falling under the care of these professionals. The public needs to feel safe going to a professional and trust that they're guided by standards that prevent them from harming people. Jordan Peterson is an entertainer at this point, and he undermines his profession. He could very easily discuss changing his approach with the professional bodies in private, but that would take him acting professionally. He's here for the clicks and the book sales. He's a professional mental gymnast, but unfortunately, they don't have a regulatory body. If the professional bodies can't have a say in what ethics are involved in practicing a profession, why on earth should the government have a say? They're not professionals, and they've proven they have no interest in consulting anybody on most issues, so how could they ever understand the nuance of any of this? Free speech is freedom to speak, not freedom from consequence, and unfortunately, they're just offloading the consequences to patients. We need less Twitter and Facebook rants, more professionalism in science. This is just more time and money wasted chasing ideology and votes for Take Back Alberta. That's from Brendon. You can walk in front of my camera, Erika. I don't care. David says, Danielle Smith and the UCP have gone down the rabbit hole again, chasing a non-issue with this Jordan Peterson law. Speaking as a retired professional engineer, Dave has his PEng. He says this is just another example of the alt-wrong, I see what you did there, the alt-wrong conservatives wanting freedom and rights without any of the required responsibilities that go along with them. A licensed professional has an ethical and professional duty to be honest and factual in their dealings with the public. Dr. Jordan Peterson is none of that and is spreading alt-wrong nonsense and lies. And he's free to spread babbling nonsense as an individual, but not as a licensed psychologist. How about this from Brent, who says, I'm starting to think that all Canadians are lazy. Lazy how? Whatever government's in power, they just throw out BS social programs that cost millions and millions and millions of tax dollars, and we just accept it. They issue mandates like plastic bans and the carbon tax and other BS to control our everyday life for some pie-in-the-sky idea, and we just say, okay, without a thought, as if there's anybody out there that questions anything about these programs. Oh, they're branded by the government, the liberal media, and all their little honks that they're either misogynistic, racist, homophobic, xenophobic, climate deniers, or whatever the hell you want to call me, and lazy, because these programs and spending, the cost working Canadians, it's costing us over half our income. Now, if anybody in Canada had the balls and enough energy to look into looking after themselves instead of having that cradle-to-grave mentality, it wouldn't be so easy for said governments to control us. And it's been proven over and over again that that's all government wants to do, and the media honks that have the platforms in Canada are not there to question the government in power. They're there to be the mouthpieces of government. Brent signs off out of Onaway by saying, as old Calgary radio sports guy Joe Sports used to say, my thoughts, not yours. That from Brent. And we'll wrap up with this from TheSco, who says, I got to admit, Jespo, I'm missing the maverick of Maudlin Mondays. He's talking about Senator Charles Adler. He says, I want you to give Johnny Infamous kudos for me. About a week ago, it was nice to see him lightly call out Hillary for referring to Donald's rally as a Nazi rally.
Lightly?
What's the rule again? He says the first one to call someone Hitler loses the debate.
Yeah.
He says it's the dying gasps of a failing regime, Democrat style. SCO says, however, some misinformation on Real Talk. Donald Trump was not dancing at his rally because there was he was dancing rather because there was a medical emergency in the crowd. He was not doing it to keep his speech, while someone was getting treated. They were playing some music. He says there's no scandal here, Jesperson. The mainstream media conveniently leaves this out to further their narrative around how Trump is unhinged and demented and whatever else they've latched onto. He says, there you go, from miss to dis to malinformation. TheSco says, regardless, carry on, Pally. The shows have been great. Thanks, TheSco. We appreciate every single one of you that contributes to this show, whether it's subscribing to YouTube, whether it's subscribing to the podcast, telling your friends, supporting our amazing sponsors like the DQs of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park, or making donations when we come together to do something special. I want to give a shout out to Ms. KD, who's put $10 to Youth Empowerment Support Services. We'll match that. And she says, I'm giving another 10 to Avenue 15 in Calgary to support youth unhoused. How cool is that? A shout out to S. Scott K, who's also kicked in $12. We're going to match that. And everybody else. We do this because we love each other, because we're a community, and because we keep it real. Thanks for being part of this. We'll see you again on Monday.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lauren Sterlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.